Welcome to today's Explainer. We're digging into a story that literally bridges ancient spirituality, a massive historical mystery, and, believe it or not, a brutal political thriller. You know Siddhartha Gautama, right? He's globally recognized as the founder of Buddhism, a figure whose teachings of peace completely shaped the world. But here's the crazy part. For centuries, historians were pulling their hair out over a maddening lack of physical evidence about his origins. Like, where did he actually come from? Did he leave any physical trace behind? Well, today we're going to uncover how the answers were finally pulled from the dense, unforgiving jungles of Nepal.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this was the core mystery fueling endless debate worldwide. Without concrete, tangible evidence of his birth, a lot of people started arguing that the Buddha was just an idea, Many thought he was entirely mythological. A powerful symbol, sure, but not a flesh and blood guy who actually walked the earth. The burden of proof was huge, and for the longest time, history's pages were just totally blank on his actual birthplace.
But that all changed, and in a really profound way. About 130 years ago, a massive discovery was made, completely swallowed up by the dense Terai jungles of Nepal. Explorers stumbled upon this remarkably tall pillar, just hidden in the overgrowth. And this wasn't just some random ancient relic. This was it, the definitive proof the world had been waiting for. This single, monumental discovery finally established, without a shadow of a doubt, that the founder of Buddhism was a real historical figure, born right there in that exact location.
To put the sheer scale of this history into perspective, think about this number, 2,500 years. That is the awe-inspiring timeline of the historical Buddha. We're talking about a figure whose life and teachings took root 2.5 millennia ago. It initiated this massive wave of philosophical and spiritual thought that has somehow endured through the rise and fall of countless entire empires.
Now, what's really interesting here is the jarring contrast we see today. 23 years. I mean, you totally expect the primary temple honoring a 2,500-year-old figure to be, incredibly ancient itself. Yet the current Maya Devi Temple standing in Lumbini today, it's shockingly brand new, literally only 23 years old. This wild gap between ancient history and modern construction sets the stage for a much larger and honestly way more complex narrative. To really understand how this sacred birthplace was finally found, we kind of have to transition into a full-on historical detective thriller. And the craziest irony here? The discovery of the birthplace of ultimate peace actually begins with a story of extreme violence. We have to look directly at the dark, bloody political history of Nepal's Rana regime. It was an era totally defined by cutthroat power struggles, where survival usually meant eliminating your closest allies. The chaotic catalyst for our whole story is an event known as the 42 Salko Parva. This was a completely brutal, violent massacre orchestrated by 4 highly ambitious brothers. Their goal was pretty simple, but deadly. They wanted to manipulate the prime ministerial succession order of Nepal. It was a calculated political assassination plot that basically threw the central government into absolute paranoia and reshuffled the entire balance of power overnight. And this brilliantly illustrates the astonishing irony of history. The mastermind behind that bloody assassination plot? A guy named Khadga Shamsher. After the massacre, the new prime minister, Bir Shamsher, lived in constant terror that Khadga might just turn around and assassinate him for power too. So he cunningly exiled his brother Khadga to Palpa to manage state affairs, basically booting him out of central politics. So overnight, this ruthless assassin became an exile, which accidentally set him on a path toward an entirely different destiny.
Meanwhile, as Khadga Shamsher was brooding in exile, another really high-stakes mission was unfolding across the border. The Archaeological Survey of India was actively, and let's be honest, somewhat desperately, searching for any historical assets connected to the Buddha. They'd successfully found spots in India where the Buddha meditated, but the ultimate prize, his actual birthplace, remained a total mystery. The pressure was really on to find the origins of this global icon.
Let's look at how these clues aligned, kind of like a perfect historical treasure hunt. The earliest hints actually came from way back in the 4th and 6th centuries, from the travelogues of Chinese pilgrims Fa Hien and Xuanzang. They noted that Lumbini, the supposed birthplace, was in ruins. Fast forward to 1885, Khadga Shamsher gets exiled to Palpa. Then, India requests permission to search the region based on those ancient texts, and Prime Minister Bir Shamsher literally hands the task over to his exiled brother. By the 1890s, archaeologist Anton Führer is sent into Nepal to team up with him.
So this creates one of history's most unlikely detective duos ever. You've got an exiled political assassin and a foreign archaeologist. Following those historical breadcrumbs from the ancient Chinese travelogues, Kajga Shumsher and Anton Führer ventured deep into the unforgiving jungle. And there, buried beneath centuries of thick overgrowth, they finally hit the jackpot. They excavated the famous Ashoka Pillar. The physical evidence they found was just magnificent. This unearthed pillar wasn't just some blank piece of stone. It featured these intricate, ancient inscriptions carved deeply into its surface in the Brahmi script. You can only imagine the tense anticipation as experts were brought in to examine the stone. They knew, right then and there, that if they could decipher this forgotten language, they might finally solve a mystery that had baffled the whole world for centuries.
So the crucial point is what those ancient inscriptions actually said. When they finally deciphered it, the text boldly declared that Emperor Ashoka himself had visited Lumbini in the 29th year of his reign to pay homage. The pillar explicitly features this amazing quote, acknowledging it as Buddha's birthplace and exempting the village from taxes. Boom! There it was, the ultimate, undeniable proof, literally carved in stone by one of history's greatest emperors.
And there's this really beautiful, poetic irony to all of this. Emperor Ashoka, the guy who erected this pillar of peace, had actually turned to Buddhism and dedicated his life to benevolent acts only after witnessing the extreme, horrifying bloodshed of the Kalinga War. So much like the exiled assassin Kajga Shumsher, who helped uncover the pillar, Ashoka was a man who totally pivoted from a life defined by violence to one centered around profound peace.
But the Ashoka Pillar was literally just the beginning. This breakthrough triggered an absolute archaeological explosion. Later on, archaeologist P.C. Mukherjee excavated the surrounding area and uncovered a complete treasure trove. We're talking ancient brick walls, the ruins of a monastery, and, incredibly, the oldest known statue of Maya Devi actually giving birth to the infant Buddha. The world finally had the concrete, tangible historical artifacts it had been desperately searching for.
Let's move to how this builds, though, because the story definitely doesn't end with a historical triumph. We have to shift gears to a very urgent modern-day reality. The ancient sanctuary of Lumbini, a site that literally survived millennia completely hidden in the jungle, is suddenly facing a severe and entirely human-made threat right now in the 21st century.
To protect the site's incredible sanctity, a massive international effort was actually launched. Recognizing its immense global value, back in 1967, UN Secretary-General U Thant recommended developing Lumbini. This led to a really extensive, carefully designed master plan by the renowned architect Kenzo Tanga in 1978. The entire goal of this plan was to protect Lumbini's historical and religious significance while safely accommodating pilgrims. But tragically, 4 decades later, that vital plan remains entirely unfinished.
So instead of careful preservation, we are seeing some severe modern threats taking hold. Because that 1978 master plan was never completed, the area around the historically invaluable Maya Devi Temple is suddenly seeing the construction of these massive concrete and glass structures. It directly contradicts the original vision of historical preservation. And on top of that, excessive commercialization and rising pollution from all this ongoing construction are just choking the site.
This brings us to a highly critical concept that experts are actively warning us about right now. They fear Lumbini is turning into a Disneyland of Buddhism. Basically, this means the complete diminishing of a site's spiritual and historical essence due to overdevelopment, constant noise, and spectacle. With loud motorboats and massive modern developments totally taking over, the profound peace that literally defines the birthplace of the Buddha is rapidly being paved right over.
And the consequences of this overdevelopment and mismanagement are playing out on a global scale. If the site isn't properly managed, and if that original preservation vision continues to be completely ignored, there is a very real, immediate risk that Lumbini will be slapped onto UNESCO's Site in Danger list, which honestly would be a tragic modern failure for a sacred site that took so much incredible effort to rediscover and verify in the first place.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question. Think about it. 130 years ago, the Buddha was dismissed by many as a fictional character, simply due to the lack of preserved history. Lumbini isn't just important to Buddhism, it is an essential, totally irreplaceable chapter of the human story. If we don't act promptly to preserve these hard-won archaeological artifacts from modern encroachment, will future generations only know these treasures as just another lost mystery? The story of Lumbini proves that history can absolutely be found, but it is entirely up to us to ensure it isn't lost all over again. Think about that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.